On August 15, 2025, global attention turned to Anchorage, Alaska, where U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin met for one of the most anticipated summits of the year. The event, held at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, was choreographed with a kind of theatrical precision that has long characterized Trump's political style. From the red carpet to the roar of a military flyover, the atmosphere blended spectacle with high-stakes diplomacy, underscoring both the symbolic weight of the occasion and the practical urgency of the ongoing war in Ukraine. The arrival ceremony itself was a show of force and grandeur. Putin, stepping off his aircraft, was met not only with the traditional honors afforded to visiting heads of state, but also with a dramatic demonstration of U.S. air power.
Sorry. Can you make a deal today, sir?
A flyover featuring B-2 bombers and F-35 fighter jets rumbled across the Alaskan skies, while U.S. military units lined the base in formal review. For Trump, this was an opportunity to showcase American strength and, at the same time, extend what appeared to be a warm welcome to a leader deeply isolated by much of the Western world.
You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was, with graffiti all over the walls. It's another part of it, by the way. Because we're talking about safety, but we're also talking about beautification.
The symbolism continued immediately after the greeting. In an unusual move, Trump invited Putin into the Beast, the heavily armored U.S. presidential limousine. The two men rode together without aides, translators, or note-takers, raising eyebrows across the diplomatic community. For some, it was a demonstration of personal rapport and directness. For others, it was a concerning sign of Trump's willingness to sidestep protocol in favor of private, unrecorded exchanges with an adversary. The image of the two leaders alone in the vehicle was quickly circulated by global media outlets and became one of the defining moments of the summit. Once inside the meeting hall, the formal talk stretched to nearly 3 hours. Both delegations were present for the bulk of the discussion, with high-ranking officials from each side playing key roles. On the American team, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff sat prominently, alongside senior defense and intelligence officials. The Russian side was led by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and top Kremlin advisors, reflecting the gravity of the discussions. While the exact details of the closed-door conversations have not been made public, both sides acknowledged that the war in Ukraine was the central focus, alongside broader issues of U.S. Russia relations, security guarantees, and economic sanctions. When Trump and Putin emerged for a press appearance, the tone was carefully calibrated. They stood side by side and delivered prepared remarks, but, significantly, neither took questions from the press. This avoidance of an open exchange reinforced the sense of a tightly stage-managed event. Trump declared the meeting very productive and spoke of great progress, though he offered no specifics about what had been achieved. Putin echoed the sentiment, praising Trump's willingness to engage directly, but likewise stopped short of announcing any breakthrough. Beneath the surface of warm words, however, the reality was stark. There was no agreement, no ceasefire, and no roadmap to peace. Putin used the platform to restate Russia's long-standing demands, including a guarantee that Ukraine would never join NATO and recognition of Russian control over the disputed Donetsk and Luhansk regions. He also revived one of his favored narratives, insisting that the war in Ukraine would not have happened if Trump had remained president in 2020, and repeating the Kremlin's claim that the U.S. election that year was rigged. The remarks were tailored not just for the international stage, but also for Trump's domestic audience, where echoes of the 2020 election continued to resonate with segments of his political base. Trump's comments, meanwhile, walked a careful line. He did not endorse Putin's demands but emphasized that there's no deal until there's a deal, hinting at the possibility of a future trilateral summit with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. By deferring to Ukraine and European allies, Trump framed himself as a facilitator rather than a unilateral decision-maker, though critics noted that the optics of the summit still elevated Putin without extracting tangible concessions. The European reaction to the meeting was swift and cautious. Leaders across the continent expressed unease that the summit granted Putin international legitimacy at a time when Russia remains deeply sanctioned and widely condemned for its invasion of Ukraine. Diplomats pointed out that while Trump had succeeded in putting Putin back on the world stage, he had not secured any concrete commitments. No ceasefire, no humanitarian corridors, and no movement on prisoner exchanges. To them, the spectacle outweighed the substance, and the summit risked weakening the united Western Front that has been carefully maintained since 2022. For Ukraine, the outcome was equally frustrating. Zelensky, who has insisted that no negotiations with Russia can occur without Ukraine at the table, viewed the bilateral nature of the Alaska meeting with skepticism. Ukrainian officials warned that any concessions made over their heads would undermine national sovereignty. They also stressed that Russia's demands, particularly the NATO ban, were unacceptable and would set a dangerous precedent for international law and the rights of sovereign states to determine their alliances. Back in the United States, the reactions were deeply divided along partisan lines. Trump supporters praised the president's ability to engage with Putin directly, portraying the summit as a sign of his strength and unique diplomatic style. They pointed to the fact that the meeting took place at all as a breakthrough, given the hostility between Moscow and Washington in recent years. Critics, however, accused Trump of prioritizing optics over substance and of granting Putin a propaganda victory. They also questioned the decision to ride privately with Putin, noting that such an unsupervised encounter could undermine transparency and national security. The summit also carried broader implications for global diplomacy. For Putin, the trip to Alaska was his first high-profile engagement with a Western leader in years, and it served to break through his international isolation. Even without a deal, simply standing beside Trump and receiving full honors on American soil was a win for the Kremlin's narrative that Russia remains a major player on the world stage. For Trump, the event reinforced his image as a dealmaker willing to go where others would not, but it also deepened concerns among allies that his approach to Russia could destabilize existing alliances. As the dust settled, the Alaska summit left the world with more questions than answers. Would Trump succeed in arranging a three-way meeting with Zelensky and Putin? Could any form of compromise be found that satisfied Russia's demands without betraying Ukraine's sovereignty? Or had the summit simply been a stage for theatrics, with little hope of changing the course of the war? What was clear, however, was that the meeting underscored the enduring complexity of U.S.-Russia relations and the deep divisions in how to approach the Ukraine conflict. Trump's declaration of great progress was vague, and Putin's reaffirmation of hardline demands showed little willingness to compromise. For the time being, the war grinds on, diplomacy remains uncertain, and the Alaska summit will be remembered less for what it achieved than for how it looked. Two leaders riding alone in a limousine, bathed in spectacle, while the world waited for answers that never came.